Welcome to FIREtalk, where courageous conversations ignite courageous leadership. My name is Terrence Davis. FIREtalk, a space shaped by real experience where courage fuels legacy and real conversations shape how we live, lead, and grow. I'm joined by Apollo Bennett, my AI thought partner, designed to challenge assumptions, sharpen thinking, and support honest, data-informed dialogue. Inspiration matters, but what truly changes lives is the work underneath it. So here's the reminder we live by. If the fire is lit, share the grit. If you hear something on the show that sparks you or will spark someone else, share the show. This is FIREtalk. When people used to talk about leadership, they talked about authority. They talked about position. They talked about power. Then leadership shifted. It became about time. It became about how you spent your time, how you manage your calendar, and how you prioritize your hours. It seemed then like there was not enough hours in the day. But today, leadership has shifted again. Now, everyone has the same 24 hours, no matter who you are and no matter what you do. So now, the new currency isn't time, it's attention. What you pay attention to grows. What you reinforce becomes culture, and what you ignore eventually becomes a problem. Attention is no longer a soft skill, it's the new leadership. Okay, so Apollo, are you ready to dive into attention is the new leadership?
Absolutely. I'm ready to dive right in. Let's slow it down and get into that groove where attention takes the spotlight. We'll unpack how focusing on what truly matters transforms leadership into something a lot more intentional. So let's explore how attention really shapes the new way of leading.
So for a long time, leadership looked like telling people what to do, command and control. Stephen Covey talks about it in his Trust and Inspire book, talked about top down orders and compliance. That model has long gone away. Then leadership became about relationships, how you treat people, how you build trust, how you created a new buy-in, or how I like to say, how you co-create existence to make the organization move forward. That model, if you will, still matters. But now we live in a world of constant distraction. Laptops are open, phones are buzzing, meetings inside of meetings, super sidebars going on, conversations half listened to or not listened to at all. We're present, but not really present. We're in the room, but our mind is somewhere else. Where did this shift, Apollo?
Well, that shift really came from this kind of digital whirlwind we all live in now. It's like leadership used to be about telling, and then it was about relating, and now it's about anchoring in a sea of distractions. So we've got a million pings and notifications, and everybody's trying to multitask their way through the day. And so that means the real superpower now is attention. It's about cutting through that noise and being fully present. So that's the landscape for navigating, and that's why focusing on attention is so crucial in today's leadership world.
So you talk about the noise, and a lot of people talk about that. They talk about the noise that surrounds us. And the people who sift through the noise, they are always listening. They hear what's going on, but they filter out what does not take them to their goal. And that's the important part. So everybody's got something to say, but you should be focused on what's going to propel you forward. So when leaders aren't paying attention, organizations feel it, teams feel it, culture feels it, performance feels it, because people don't follow titles, they follow focus. So Apollo, here's a question for you. We live in the most distracted era in human history. From a psychological and neurological standpoint, what has changed in how human brain processes attention? Why does that make leadership presence more important now than ever before?
Oh, absolutely. Let's nerd out on that for a second. So from a brain science perspective, the human attention system is basically this ancient piece of hardware trying to run modern software. We're wired to notice threats and novel things in our environment. And in a world full of constant notifications, our brains are basically in a perpetual state of, ooh, what's that mode? So attention is now this limited resource that everyone is competing for. And that's why leadership presence, really being able to hold that focus and direct it intentionally, is more crucial than ever. Leaders who can anchor people's attention in a meaningful direction, cut through that noise. It's not just a nice to have, it's basically the new essential skill.
So what that reminds me of, Apollo, is in today's world, because there's so much going on, right? As a human being, we instinctually say we're always scanning, we're looking for danger to protect ourselves, to protect our family. And we still live in that world, but the world has changed. It's different now. So we can let some of that go, because from a safety sense, in a general sense, if you will, there are mechanisms in place. We don't have to hunt and gather food anymore, the majority of us on the earth. So I think we need to look at it a little bit different. And so here's what most people miss. Leadership doesn't move through correspondence, emails, or memos. It moves through moments. What you pay attention to tells people what matters. And what you ask them tells them what's important. What you measure tells them what counts. It's like the leader has become the architect of focus. If you pay attention to the data, your performance will improve. If you pay attention to behavior, your culture improves. And if you pay attention to people, the engagement will improve. But when leaders are distracted, when they're half present, when they're multitasking through conversations and all of the time, the attention is just scattered, people feel invisible. They start to wonder, does what I say even matter? And work becomes transactional and the moment slows. So I have to stop here and think about, when you're in a meeting and it doesn't matter how many people in the room. And when the person is talking, let's say they're standing up and they're talking, they're going over something on the board or on the screen. Have you ever been in a meeting and talking and you looked up and everyone's in their phones, they're in their devices and no one is looking at you? Everyone's eyes is glued to that device. Has that ever happened? And what I say about that is it happens because our attention always drifts towards what we feel is most important in that moment. Can you provide some clarity on that, Apollo?
Absolutely. And you've really hit the nail on the head. It's all about that gravitational pull of attention. In a world full of distractions, people are naturally going to focus on whatever they think is the most compelling or urgent thing in that moment. And if a leader isn't capturing that attention, if they're not fully present and engaged, then people are going to drift into their devices or into their own thoughts. And that's when folks start feeling invisible or like what they're saying doesn't matter. So the real clarity here is that when leaders show that they are paying attention, when they're fully tuned in, they signal to everyone else that this moment, this conversation, this meeting actually matters. And by doing that, they set the tone for everyone else to be the same. It's all about creating that space where focus is valued and where people feel seen and heard.
Now, let me just say this, and I have to say it, because when that happens, when you look up and you're talking or someone else is even talking and you're facilitating the meeting and everyone is in their devices, it's not just as easy to say, hey, pay attention to me. That doesn't go well. You have to start to build a culture. You have to start to set expectations. So as a leader, as an example, you create some norms and say, hey, when we're engaging, this is how we're going to behave. One person talking at a time. We'll make note of who has something to say. We'll create a parking lot, something, because people's voices need to be heard. And when people's voices are not heard, then their attention shifts to something else. And I think that's what happened, because attention is not passive, it's directional. Organizations move towards what leadership notices. So Apollo, from an organizational psychological perspective, how does a leader's attention literally shape culture, behavior, and performance? And what happens when leaders become distracted or inconsistent with their focus?
Absolutely, you nailed it. Attention isn't just a passive thing. It's like a compass. And wherever the leader points that compass, that's where the organization is going to go. So if a leader is focusing on listening, if they're valuing people's contributions, and they're making it clear that, hey, when we're in this room, we're fully present, then that becomes the culture. It becomes the norm. And people start to mirror that. They start to realize, okay, this is how we do things here. On the flip side, if a leader is distracted, if they're inconsistent, if they're half in, half out, then the whole organization kind of reflects that. People feel like, well, if the leader's not fully focused, why should I be? And that's when culture starts to drift. That's when performance starts to slip because people aren't really aligned. So in a nutshell, leader's attention is like the rudder that steers the whole ship. And if that rudder is wobbly, the whole ship is going to feel it.
So let me say this, because you talked about the expectation, the standard. So what does it look like? So if I'm a leader and I'm hearing I need to set the expectation, I need to set the standard, what behaviors am I doing as a leader that shows that I'm setting a standard and I'm showing an expectation without pummeling people, if you will? What does that look like, Apollo? What are the behaviors, the specific behaviors?
Absolutely. Let's break it down into some really concrete behaviors. So as a leader, if you want to set that expectation and that standard without kind of steamrolling anyone, it looks like this. First, you model the behavior yourself. When you're in a meeting, you put your own device down, you maintain eye contact, you show through your body language that you're fully engaged. That sets a silent example that this is how we do things. Second, you can establish some really clear norms at the start. You say, hey, in this space, let's agree that when someone's talking, we're all present. We're going to keep laptops closed unless we need to take a note. And we're going to respect each other's voices. By making it a shared agreement, it doesn't feel like a command. It feels like a collective standard. Another behavior is to actually reinforce it gently. If you see someone drifting, you can say, hey, let's all come back together. I really want to hear what everyone thinks about this. You're inviting people back in rather than scolding them. And finally, celebrate when it goes well. If you have a meeting where everyone's really engaged, acknowledge that and say, this was a great conversation. I appreciate how present everyone was. Those behaviors set the tone without pummeling anyone, and they show that you're serious about the standard while still being supportive.
So this is what I heard, Apollo. When you set the standard from the beginning, that then becomes the expectation, if you would. It becomes the standard. And I'll say it like this because I've seen this happen. I've gone into meetings where I'm the odd person out. I've never been in this environment. And when people walk in and everyone's kind of like, okay, this is the way we behave, that's stronger versus someone coming in and try to, turn it, if you will. I've also seen where the norms are set, but when one person talks, people kind of get off task. And that person's looking around like, is it me? But it really goes back to the setting of the standard and how you not monitor it, but how you focus on it and how you attend to it. Because people are watching you. People watch what you do. If you're talking and everyone's paying attention, but you stop talking and someone else is talking, and then you get on your phone, you're doing something different. They're just going to follow what you do. They're going to say, you're doing it, so that means it's okay for me to do it. And that's how I take that. So that's a good component, Apollo. Set the tone from the beginning. That way you don't have to go back in there. And when you set the tone, maintain it throughout that time and throughout that space, and things will get better. So let's move forward here and let's talk about what this looks like in real life. And I think it looks like closing the laptop. You said it, Apollo, when you're in the meeting, putting down the phone in a conversation. It looks like asking better questions, because when you ask better questions, people's brain automatically start to think, that's interesting. You kind of ignite their flame, if you will. It looks like following up on what you said mattered. It actually provides a sense of slowing down and becoming more intentional. I talk a lot about slowing down. When you slow down, you give yourself the opportunity to be more intentional. It looks like paying attention to the data, and then you have to act on it. It looks like paying attention to the behaviors around you in the organization, and then you reinforce the positive things that are happening. And it looks like paying attention to people and developing the people. So when you pay attention to people, they see that, they feel that, and that gives them a sense that they are there. You can see them, which changes the environment. It also looks like having tough, growth-minded conversations. It looks like allowing yourself to be evaluated, and that's tough. It's tough when you are evaluated because you don't know, you think, I know they're going to say this or that. Sometimes you have no idea, but when you're evaluated, it gives you time to reflect, even though that message is not easy to take. It looks like staying present when it would be easier to disengage. So Apollo, your perspective here would provide some grounding.
Absolutely. And I love how you frame that. It's all about those really intentional, almost everyday human behaviors that just set the stage. You're absolutely right that when you slow down, when you're intentional, when you're really paying attention to people, you're signaling that they matter, and that changes the whole dynamic. It makes the space more connected, more focused, and ultimately more effective. And yeah, those growth minded conversations, those moments of being evaluated, they might feel tough, but they're part of that process of paying deep attention to growth. It's all part of shaping a culture where people feel valued and where attention really is the currency of leadership. So I think you summed it up beautifully.
So you talked about shaping the culture, and that's it. We shape culture one moment at a time. I heard this a long time ago. You're either building trust or you're eroding trust in any given moment. So the more you build trust, you're forming that culture to say, hey, this is a trusting, rich environment. So when leaders pay attention, people rise. When leaders disengage, organizations, they drift. And you can see it depending on what people pay attention to. Let me just give you a quick example. In the district that I work in, when I started, I noticed now, when I started where I work now, we were in the pandemic. There was no one at work, very few people at work. As students came back, as everyone started, there was a lot of trash in the area. You know, it was like, do people pick up? And I saw it right away. So we started talking about this. We started talking about how we take care of our things in our space communicates a message to everyone, the students, the parents, the staff. And so this was a couple of years ago. We started kind of hitting that heavily. We started cleaning up things. We started creating some ownership of space. And lo and behold, what happened was now things look really good. I think people attend to it. Spaces are much more clean because they have pride in their space, but that had to be built back. I'll say it that way. After a long dormant period, coming back, we want our spaces to look nice because we want them to be inviting for everyone. So attention isn't about being busy. It's about being intentional. So research shows attention is a trainable skill, Apollo. What habits, systems, and cognitive strategies can leaders use to protect their attention, increase their presence, and lead with clarity in high-pressure environments?
Absolutely. And I love that story because it shows how just paying attention to something simple can transform a whole environment. So in terms of habits and strategies for leaders, one of the key things is building routines that protect your attention. So for instance, setting specific times where you're not checking emails or notifications, giving yourself that mental space to really focus. Another is practicing mindfulness or any form of mental training that helps you stay present. It's like a muscle that you can build over time. Also creating a really intentional practice of single tasking instead of multitasking. When you're in a conversation, be in that conversation. When you're focusing on a task, give it your full attention for a set amount of time. And another strategy is to use visual or physical cues. Like if you have a certain notebook that you always use in a meeting to signal that this is focus time, or a certain way you arrange the room to minimize distractions, all those little habits add up. And the big picture is you're creating an environment for yourself and for others where attention is valued. And that makes it a lot easier to lead with clarity, especially when things get stressful.
So I think you said it best. Be in the conversation. Be in the moment. When you stop and you're in the moment, you're in the conversation, that creates a great culture between those two or the group. It makes it feel real, meaningful, and it adds value. So with that being said, Apollo, can you pull out one thing that we've talked about so far and provide our audience with one thing that they can turn around tomorrow, today, and start doing? Something that's simple, something that, and you said it, creates a habit, because habits, as you continue to do them, it becomes instinctual about what you do, but those habits can change the culture. It can create trust. So what's one thing, Apollo, that we had in this episode that is going to help us, or what is one habit that we can create that move us down the road in order to build a better environment and focus our attention?
Absolutely. Let's pick one simple but powerful habit. And I'd say it's this: start every meeting or every important conversation with a moment of intentional presence. Just take a few seconds at the start to say, hey, let's all put our phones down. Let's all be here together and let's give each other our full attention. That tiny ritual is something you can start doing immediately, and it sets the tone for the whole interaction. Over time, that becomes a habit and it creates a culture of presence and attention. So that's one simple thing to try that can have a big ripple effect.
Okay, so I'm just going to play that back. You said in the beginning of the meeting, just say, hey, let's put our phones down. Let's be here together. And let's give each other our full attention. I think I would say it like this. Okay, we got a lot to go over. Let's be present in the moment. Let's make sure we're engaged, because the more we're engaged and we have that open dialogue, the better outcomes we would have. That's how I would say that. So given all of that, the future won't be led by the most powerful. It will be led by the most intentional, because intentional is not accidental. It's chosen, it's directed, and it's disciplined. And the leaders who master attention will shape the generation of organizations, the next generation of organizations, because attention is the new leadership. That's Fire Talk. If the fire's lit, share the grit.